Thank you. I'm very honored to receive this award, and to receive it amongst such talented faculty makes it even more special. Interim President Griswold, Provost Chamley-Wright, Mr. Nordberg, Dr. Walsh, Ms. Culp, President Harrison, Reverend Delaplane, Dr. Gillen, students, faculty, staff, and family, welcome. It is truly an honor to stand here and address you today. A few weeks after commencement, I received a letter from President Reese acknowledging the Alumni Association's Distinguished Teaching Award and requesting my presence here at Convocation to deliver the keynote address. I immediately began to wonder what on earth I could talk about to such a diverse group and such an intelligent group. As I pondered this, I reread President Reese's letter, and my eyes paused on the section where he outlined the history of this Distinguished Teaching Award and wrote that it was first conferred in May of 1994. I immediately then knew what I would talk about. May 1994 is a very significant date to me. It is the month and year that I failed out of college. To make matters worse, this came on the heels of a semester in which I earned a 0.00 GPA. In fact, I literally failed every class that semester. The 20 years since that dark moment in my life has been a remarkable journey, one that has taught me many lessons and shaped, literally in every way, how I approach teaching and learning. And today I'd like to relay to you some of the highlights of that journey. I was recruited to wrestle at Ohio State and began my freshman year there in 1991. At that time, Ohio State's wrestling team was top 5 in the country. I was so excited to be part of such an amazing team. In fact, during my recruiting trip the year before, I stayed with one of the assistant coaches, later Olympian, Mark Coleman, who was busy training for the upcoming Pan Am Games. Yes, for those of you who are familiar with UFC or Ultimate Fighting, he is now Mark the Hammer Coleman. I saw how he trained and wanted to train just like that. I'd never seen anyone push themselves to the limit that he did. I vividly remember the day I returned so very pumped from the recruiting trip. I had been on numerous trips that year, but none like the one I experienced at Ohio State. I recalled all the details, or at least those appropriate for my parents, to my mother and father, and waited for their response. After I'd finished, the first words out of my father's mouth were, what did you think of the library? Well, I replied I was not brought to the library, but the wrestling room was amazing and the weight room was stocked with state-of-the-art training equipment. My father then asked me what I thought of the classes that I sat in on. I replied to him that I did not see any classes, but watched 2 wrestling practices and they were awesome. Yeah, my parents were skeptical and had every right to be, but I was convinced that this was the place for me. So as soon as I began my freshman year, the new members of the wrestling team were introduced or brought in front of our athletic academic advisor. See, we were assigned an academic advisor and an academic athletic advisor. The athletic academic advisor informed us that he would be taking care of all academic-related issues, and we were not to ever meet with our assigned academic advisors. I took his advice and never did. School went fine in the beginning. I was certainly focused on wrestling, but my grades were okay. They were okay. Mostly high B's and low A's, but then something devastating began to happen, and my eyesight slowly began to fail. My grades began to drop. As it became more difficult to see, I became less interested in school. Part of being an athlete at Ohio State meant that we had our own team doctor, and we had access to free eye care. Eye care in this case consisted of visits to the ophthalmology graduate students. Despite repeated visits, they had no idea what was wrong with me, and I spent the next few years with worsening eyesight and, of course, grades. Unbeknownst to me, I had a degenerative eye disease known as keratoconus. By my 3rd year, forget seeing the board, I couldn't even read a book if I was holding it in front of my face. My grades were dropping fast, and my academic advisor was very busy trying to keep me eligible. This was a monumental task that included me declaring new majors regularly. Wrestling, on the other hand, was still going well and was about the only thing that I had going for me. I redshirted my first year and then worked my way up to the varsity spot at 158 pounds by my 3rd year. My dream was coming true. Now I just had to stay eligible. Since wrestling is a winter sport, winter break consisted of a total of 3 days at home. So I was so focused on making this one bright light in my life brighter that on one of those days I took the train to the New York Athletic Club to practice with some of the international world-class wrestlers that train there regularly. That day, while training, I blew out my knee. I was done. I promptly returned to Ohio State, hobbled on crutches with my MRIs in hand to the coach who was waiting as the rest of the team loaded the bus bound for the dual meet at Michigan State, and he refused to acknowledge me. In fact, he didn't talk to me again for 2 months. My world was crashing down around me. I was going blind, and I was out for the season. I failed every class. In May of 1994, I was officially thrown out of school. The school informed me I was allowed to return after 1 year if I chose. I walked across the street, called my father from the payphone in front of Long's bookstore, and told him the news. I spent the next year of my life in Powell, Ohio, living and working on a 4,000-acre pig farm. My eyesight was failing, but the pig farm experience was certainly enough to push me to try school one more time. So after a year off, I re-enrolled in Ohio State. It was a complete disaster. 4 weeks into the new semester, this is the truth, I actually found out I had been attending the wrong class. Defeated, I withdrew and returned home to my parents. Graduating college was a long-lost hope now. In fact, to be completely honest, I don't think I ever truly believed I had the ability to ever graduate. So to make a very long story short, within a day of being home, my mother realized how bad my eyes actually were and made it her mission to find out what was wrong with me. At this point, I still had not been diagnosed. Thanks to her hard work, within a week, she found someone who could diagnose me, but this doctor couldn't help. He referred us to a specialist that could, and then I began a long road to improving my eyesight. At this point, I was legally blind, and the best I could achieve with correction was 2800 vision. A number of factors all came together to result in my failing out of school. However, an equally remarkable set of circumstances coalesced to help ensure my final success. Around the same time I began to correct my eyesight, I was contacted by several Division III coaches. They all recruited me out of high school, but then I was only focused on trying to wrestle for a Division I program. They heard I was back and knew I still had a year left of eligibility. I informed them that I would love to try college again, but my grades were horrible. Didn't they know that I actually failed out and dropped out of school? They all said they could get me in no matter what my grades were. Well, they didn't have as much pull as they thought, all except for the coach from the College of New Jersey. He was able to get me enrolled under the condition that I declared a physics major because that department needed more majors. This was great. I finally, this was great. Now I finally met with my first academic advisor ever. I was set to chart my course to graduation. However, as I sat in my new advisor's office, I was devastated when they informed me that because my grades were so bad and the courses I did pass didn't work towards any real degree, I was looking at another 4 full years of college. This was 1996. I started college in 1991, and I was looking at graduating in 2000. It was a long road, but I still decided to give it a shot, and I'm so glad I did. In fact, it was there that I met my wife, Christina. The next 4 years were not without struggle. In fact, partway through, when it seemed like graduation was still so very far away, I attempted to enroll in culinary school in New York City. And an idea that was quickly squashed by my parents, who thought I had gone way too far to give up now. Eventually, I graduated in the spring of 2000, and before graduation, Christina and I actually had landed jobs teaching in nearby school districts. By the time I graduated, I had declared 7 different majors, and are you ready for this? Nutrition, math 3 separate times, forestry, engineering, twice physics, history and secondary education, and I spent at least 1 semester in each. I estimate that during the course of my undergraduate career, I took approximately 80 different classes. To put that in perspective, to graduate from Washington College, you need to take approximately 32. The story doesn't end there. Halfway through my first semester of teaching high school history, I realized I loved teaching, but I didn't want to teach high school nor history. Once I'd actually graduated, I realized I could do anything I could put my mind to, so I decided to go to graduate school. No one ever told me I could actually major in something I loved and make a career out of it. I was passionate about archaeology and primitive skills and found out that I could focus on something called experimental archaeology, and it all seemed perfect for me. I informed my wife and parents of my plans, and I can only imagine what they thought. Here I was, finally a college graduate after 10 years, finally landed a job, employed with a decent job, and I was about to give that up for something that truly seemed unattainable. Christina drew a circle on a map, a small circle, and said I could try, but we weren't leaving this radius and our families and everything we knew. I had to pick a school within that radius, and that left Rutgers and Temple. It was a small radius. So I went for a visit to Rutgers, right? And I left in tears. The professor I met with at Rutgers said that Rutgers would never take me, nor was I graduate school material, and I was lucky to have graduated college in the first place. So that left Temple. After several meetings with faculty in the anthropology department, I was accepted into their PhD program. Shortly after beginning my graduate school, my eyesight troubles became so severe that I received 2 corneal transplants. I flourished in their program. Even though it took me 10 years to graduate with an undergraduate degree, I broke a departmental record for obtaining both a master's and a PhD in 4.5 years. So what did I learn from this experience, and how has it shaped me as a teacher? Well, the only way I was able to make it through was because of the support structure I had in my family. This support did not always come in the form of bailing me out. In fact, it rarely did. I can only imagine how difficult this journey was for my parents financially and emotionally. They never gave up on me, but also never made it too easy. If they had, I would not be here in front of you today. They let me fail when I had to and patiently waited as I picked myself up. However, when I faced an obstacle that was out of my control, such as my eyesight, they did everything they could to get me the help I needed. My wife was a constant source of support as well as a role model. Her academic success was something I always strove to emulate. She agreed to put our life on hold to allow me time to go to graduate school, even though it seemed like a crazy idea. My mother and father-in-law took us in when we both started graduate school because we had no source of income and nowhere to live. Thank you all, truly. What I would like to spend the remainder of my time talking about, however, is how these experiences have shaped me as a teacher. I first attempted to formulate my teaching philosophy very early after I started graduate school at Temple. In fact, I was given my own classroom the second semester of my first year in graduate school. I mean, I don't know what the anthropology professors at Temple were thinking. Not only did they accept me, but they had me adjunct teaching in my own classroom right away, and it was the best thing that could have ever happened. By this point, I'd had a lot of teachers, some terrible, some okay, and some excellent. In attempting to figure out how I would approach my own teaching, I asked myself, what was it that allowed me to flourish in some classes more than others despite my eyesight troubles? I couldn't really come up with a good answer. So then I turned the question on its head. If I could not readily formulate a good teaching philosophy from my experiences, perhaps I could try to understand how I learned best. In other words, I could develop a learning philosophy first, and then from there, develop a teaching philosophy. So I asked myself, how do I learn? What is it that I try to do when I find someone incredible and want to learn from them? What do I think about? My answer came quickly. When I see someone I want to learn from, someone amazing, I want to see what they see when they look at the world. For instance, I want to see what an archaeologist sees when they look at the landscape and imagine how, in their head, they envision the landscape forming and how people utilize it in the past. I want to see what a flint knapper or a stone tool technician sees when they look at a rock. I want to see what a potter sees when they look at a lump of clay. I want to see what a waterman sees when they look at the bay. I want the way in which they see the world to enhance and enrich, not replace, the way I already see it. And it's ironic that as I literally was going blind, I seemed to learn best from the people who taught me new ways to see. Okay, so I had the basis of this philosophy, but I still needed a way to implement it. Now I could look at effective teachers I had in the past for guidance. How did they make me see the world the way they did? Unfortunately, there were no clear-cut answers here. They all did it differently. However, the effective ones had 2 things in common. They all were passionate about what they did, and they all effectively contextualized what they were teaching. And I asked myself, how would I do this? How far should I go in creating context? How much is really needed? An experience during my first year at Washington College showed me that I should never take anything for granted, and sometimes it is, in fact, necessary to start at the very beginning. I had developed a GRW course for freshmen titled Food, People, and the Planet. In addition to teaching writing and research skills, the students in this course were going to learn about the relationship between people, food, health, the environment, sustainability, and they were going to do this in a very unique way. At the beginning of the semester, each student was assigned a contemporary food theme, and they were to spend the semester researching, writing about, and presenting on their theme. But in addition, they also developed a 6-course meal that highlighted each of their themes, and over the course of the semester, they began preparation for this meal that ultimately was served at the president's house to 35 invited guests. By the time the meal was prepared, no 2 ingredients were put together by anyone but the students. I believe that this would allow them to more fully contextualize what they were learning about in the class. The importance of this type of project-based hands-on learning became apparent early in the semester, the first night I had students over to the house to cook. 6 students arrived and began preparation, and I was all set I took the first 3 through the door to the counter in the kitchen that was covered with bowls and eggs and told them to begin cracking and separating the egg yolks from the egg whites. Meanwhile, I took the second set of students downstairs where they began grinding flour that was later used in making bread. I was gone for about 10 minutes before I returned upstairs. When I returned, nothing had been done. I looked around in dismay. No one moved. No one had cracked an egg. Nothing. They were just standing there. Bewildered, I asked them if the problem was that no one had ever shown them how to separate the yolk from the whites, and received only blank stares in return. After a minute of silence, one of the students said, "No one has ever shown us how to crack an egg." I was floored. How do you even make it to college not knowing how to crack an egg? On the surface, this might not seem like a big deal, nor that it may have any relation to the higher level thinking I was asking them to do in the classroom. But I think it has everything to do with that. How could I expect them to understand the relationship between people and the environment, and health and sustainability, or the place of chicken houses in modern food systems, or the issues surrounding the fight for the backyard chickens in Kent County, if they don't understand the relationship between a people and an egg? This experience completely reinforced the need for me to not take anything for granted and to start at the very beginning whenever possible. Throughout the rest of the semester, not only did the students learn to crack eggs, but they butchered pigs, cured meat, made beer and cheese, fermented vegetables, and foraged for wild plants. This was all accomplished outside of and in addition to scheduled class time, and when the final meal was served, the students were prepared. The students became the servers, and in between each course, contextualized for the diners by individually presenting on their own theme-based research what they were eating, why they were eating it, how it was prepared, and why it was important. I've taken a very similar approach to all of my teaching, but it wasn't until last fall that I was finally able to put a label on this approach. It was during my experimental archaeology class last fall when I brought 2 Viking technology experts from Canada to my class to spend a week with us and help us building and using a Viking-era bloomery kiln to smelt iron from local bog iron. During this workshop, one of the Viking experts used the term sole authorship and used it in a way I'd never heard it used before. When I asked him the meaning, he replied that it's a term thrown around in their circles that mean engaging in a task entirely from the very beginning all the way to the end. I couldn't believe it. This is what I've always strove to do in my teaching and my own learning, and in my own teaching, and this is carried over into my learning and teaching as well. Sole authorship. I would like to finish with one example of how I recently incorporated this philosophy into my teaching. This summer, I taught a class I call Interpreting the Past, the Ethical, Political, and Economic Factors Influencing How Our History is Portrayed. This 3-week class exposed students to the many virtual time machines that exist, such as museums, experimental archaeology, open-air museums, reenactments, and gatherings that allow us to gain access to our past. During this course, students were immersed in the various ways the past is interpreted through public site visits, behind-the-scene tours, lectures, demonstrations, discussions, presentations by interpreters and reenactors, etc. The first 10 days of the course were based out of Washington College, where the students took advantage of the many opportunities that exist within close proximity of the school. Then we traveled to Denmark, a country with arguably the richest tradition of archaeology in the world, where students explored the topic more fully for several days. The highlight of the course were the last 5 days, during which time the students put everything they learned about historical interpretation to the test by becoming interpreters themselves at the world's premier open-air museum, Lyra. This year, the students, my family, and I inhabited a Stone Age village for 5 days and lived and interpreted Stone Age life to the public. Each of the students in this class made their own brain-tanned deerskin clothes for this experience entirely from scratch. I'm getting some blank stares. Do you know what I mean by buckskins or a loincloth? Some of you? Well, as I mentioned earlier, I learned a long time ago I should never take anything for granted, so I think we need to contextualize this with an example. I really need to take the sandals off. That doesn't match. Okay. Preparation for these clothes started 10 months before the class ran and really exemplifies this notion of sole authorship. Last October, students butchered and fleshed deer and used stone tools that they made themselves. Then, the students spent their spring break tanning the skins using prehistoric methods, requiring the use of nothing more than animal brains, water, and smoke, and the hardest manual labor many of them have ever engaged in. Then the students tailored their clothes using lacings of leather they cut from the skin and sinew, or the tendons from the deer that they extracted and processed. Once finished, the students literally lived in their clothes and relied upon them for 5 full days. Certainly, this exercise made the entire experience more rewarding and authentic and served to bring the group together well before the class started, but it also did so much more. They learned firsthand how to make something out of nothing, how to make tools and use them, how to extract something useful from the environment, and what that actually means. In this case, it required the loss of an average of 4 lives to clothe each student, and these are deer lives, not human lives. They learn the anatomy of a deer and the qualities of the different parts of the skin. They learn the properties of brains, skin, sinew, and tools made out of bone, antler, wood, and stone. They learned how this type of tanning leaves no negative impact on the environment, in stark contrast to modern tanning methods that are extremely destructive. They learned the value of hard work. Nothing about the process was shielded from them, and as a result, they have a better understanding of the place of humans in the environment and what that truly means. They forged tools, used them, and made something useful that they relied upon for days to clothe them and shield them from the elements. They also can now better interpret the archaeological record and life in the past. Yet it does even so much more. I believe they can actually apply these lessons to modern life and rely upon their experience to better understand important modern issues, such as resource extraction and sustainability. Students experiencing this sort of education are the ones that I want making important decisions about the future. They have the ability to see the consequences of their actions by having followed something entirely from the beginning to the end. I am thankful that I am here at Washington College because this is what we do here. Washington College supports new and innovative teaching. Washington College makes use of the amazing area within which we are located and believes that the classroom exists outside of these walls. The world is truly our classroom. We have innovative and life-changing programs such as the Chesapeake semester and the Southwest trip that expose students to the very education I spoke about today. We are continually creating new teaching and learning opportunities and spaces such as Chino Farms, the new academic building, and the waterfront. Everyone is blind in some way, and for me, it was real blindness. Our job as professors is to provide our students with the opportunity to see the world in new and unique ways. If we are passionate about what we do and provide the proper context in whatever way we choose, we have the power to provide our students with the opportunity to see the world through our eyes, to enhance their learning and make real change. And to the students, you made an excellent choice in Washington College. Take advantage of all the traditional and non-traditional learning opportunities we offer here. Explore them all and follow your dreams. Believe me, the 10 years I spent floundering trying to succeed following paths that other people thought I should pales in comparison to what I've been able to accomplish after I found out what I was truly passionate about. Now I truly love and live what I teach. Be prepared to open your eyes fully and see the world in brand new ways. We, the faculty at Washington College, have so much to share with you. Thank you.